So this is a pattern that I used for that hoodie there. Here are the measurements for it. 10.5 inches from the middle there to the top of the shoulder over there. 12.5 from this corner here up to the top there. And that's not 12.5 just straight up and down, but 12.5 as a curve across this way is 12 inches. All right, and that gives you a hoodie that looks like that. Okay, you can see that here I've written move down an inch, move over an inch, because I want the neck to not be as wide. I want it to be more down, more slim. So I'm paying more attention to the front versus the back, because before I was just making front and back pieces the same, but now I'm starting to make the front a little bit lower. And just ignore this, it's not a size medium, it's more like a size large men's. What I need to do to make this pattern good is I need to add a 5/8 seam allowance right here, a 5/8 seam allowance right here, 5/8 seam allowance, and a 5/8 seam allowance. So every edge except this edge needs a seam allowance. And the reason that this edge doesn't need a seam allowance is because if you see that fabric over there, usually when you buy fabric it's folded on one side or both sides. You can just put it down like this on the fold. When it's on the fold like that, cut it out in one go, but then get the whole piece, like your whole chest piece at the top there. So that's why we're only doing half of it, if that makes sense. For the second half of the pattern, the part that makes the body, right there, these are the measurements. 12 inches across at the top, okay, 11 and an eighth at the bottom, or you could just do 11, and 15 3/4 from top to bottom. Again, this pattern is without the seam allowance. So add seam allowance, add 5/8 here at the top, add 5/8 here at the side, 5/8 at the bottom, but not 5/8 on the one side, because again, we're gonna use the fabric and how it's folded to cut our full piece. I put a double welt pocket in it, and I find the double welt is sweet, but next double welt I make, I'm gonna make it so that I can somehow button it together, because it just makes the fabric like lose a bit of its structure. Anyways, though, the pattern piece to me it looks good, you know. I like a baggier looking hoodie, so this is kind of perfect. That's good. And I'll make another video, but you can see how I do my hoods now. They're like that and like that. Just sew it right side to right side. I would recommend leaving a little bit more of a seam allowance if you're gonna do the armpit long, like if you're gonna do the two-tone, like this color here and then different color body. Recommend making this a little longer just so that you have more room when it comes to do that armpit. You can see on this side the stitch kind of came out, so I have to go back and restitch it, which is no big deal, but it would just probably be easier if this was just a little bit longer down to there. And you can see if you watch my other video how we do those double needle stitches and how it kind of makes that shoulder look real clean. Same thing with right here. Stitch there, and a double needle, so you get that professional look. Just don't try to sew it with the camera right there, because you might you might be like me and sew completely off course. But yeah, that's the basics for patterns. That's the basics, yo. That's the basics. I find that having the sleeve like this, like the sleeve is quite big. So I think on this pattern that I used, I said -2 inches, because I don't want the sleeve to hang down that much. I could give myself 2 inches, and that's about 2 inches there. Probably wouldn't be that bad. I'd probably look a little bit more clean, little bit more fitted, a little bit. I still like this look though. And these patterns are more or less for hoodies. You need a ruler, pen, ruler and a pen. Get your ruler, get your pen. Alright, so you want to get a scrap piece of paper or a big poster board like I've got there, and we're talking about how to make a pattern. So it took me forever to figure out how to make patterns, but I think the best way, see what I'm doing with the hoodie? You gotta try it on, you know, try your hoodies on, measure them out, you know, measure once, draw a line, measure again, draw a line, measure the page, draw a line, think of how long you want the hoodie, draw a line, think, scratch your head a little, look around a little, you know, reference other hoodies or other designs you've made. I think the shoulder seam is roughly 6 inches. Shoulder seam's roughly 6 inches, or you can even lie a t-shirt down like that and we're just trying to get the upper quadrant of it. So the part with the neck and the sleeves and the chest. So just like a square. I've got 2 squares. They're kind of 2 of them beside my iPad. You see? Sorry, my area is a bit messy in the shot, but you can see there's 2 already made patterns that I'm kind of going off of. And here I give you guys a little bit better angle, so I'm just saying I'm making that shirt center. So I'm just measuring, making sure it's equidistant from the middle, and I'm lining up the tag right on the edge of the paper there, so the paper is in the middle of the tag. And then I'm like, okay, I'll just draw and just trace around it. Then I try to put the sleeve inside out, and it kind of messes everything up. You probably could do it like that, but I think I end up actually just saying meh, and I take the sleeve out in a sec. Yeah, I'm like, no. Okay, so just put the thing on there and just draw what you see. That hole, perfect. See what I got there? Done. That's it. Bada boom, bada bing. I should have left myself more room up in the top there for the shoulder seam allowance. So here I'm just measuring out a seam allowance because I'm going to make a dual tone sweater. Like the upper part is going to be a different color than the bottom. So I want, you know, to sew the upper part to the lower part. So I got to make the pattern, and what I'm going to end up doing is right there in that line, I'm going to cut that line. So I'm kind of just making sure I'm giving myself around a 5/8 seam allowance. And when you're doing something like this, you got to go 5/8 and then another 5/8 because yeah, and you cut there 5/8 and then another 5/8 because you're sewing 2 pieces together, so you need 2 seam allowances. Right there, I'm just I'm saying, okay, make it. Oh, maybe I'm trying to just make it longer. I can't see what that says. Anyways, I'm just trying to make it longer because you want a hoodie a little bit longer than just a normal shirt like that. You know, you want some breathing room in there. So you can use like a shirt like that as a general size. If you want to bag your hoodie, just use a bigger shirt. You know, go find an extra large shirt. If you're making it for a girl, or you are a girl and you want something tighter, you know, make it tighter. You know, just take your measurements, and it's pretty straightforward. It's a lot of trial and error. But yeah, you're seeing my method right now. I'm going to cut there, and you can see how I wrote stitch. And I think right now I'm just adding a seam allowance, so 5/8. There's some things to the neck hole that I've learned over the course of me making patterns. And basically the neck hole, if you make it longer, like closer to your belly button, okay, it's gonna it's gonna probably sit a little bit better than if you were to make it wider and make your shoulder like not 6 inches. If your shoulder is like 4 or 5 inches, then it might look a little strange on the body. So here I'm trying to measure out lower down, closer to the belly button there for the front of the neck. Hello? Sorry about that, guys. I had to edit out that phone call. So you want to use your measuring tape and kind of bend it like that. You want to bend it. So I'm trying to measure the front part at 8 inches and the back at 5 inches. So yeah, the front's going to dip down at 8 inches long and the back 5 inches long. So that's what you want to give it kind of that 3D shape, just so it sits nicely on your body and everything kind of lines up and matches up to where it's supposed to. I would recommend just using sort of scrap material or cheaper material and just make your first one just to see how it fits and stuff. And I would recommend making it a bit bigger than you would think you'd have to. So measure, double measure, measure again. Make sure your seam allowances, you're accounting for them. You got to account for your seam allowances. So you got to take your whole measurement and then add your seam allowance onto that. Because if you just take your measurement, and I've done this before, you take your measurement that you want, so you want it 25 inches long, right? 25 inches long, but then by the time you sew everything together, it's like 24 inches or 23.5 inches, and you're like, what happened? Well, it's the seam allowance. Now make sure your seam allowance, okay, I'm going to cut right there, right in the middle, so now you can see both sides have that seam allowance on there. And something that I actually embarrassingly forgot to do here, but make sure you're accounting for the seam allowance on the neckline too. Specifically where your neckline meets the shoulder. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to add your seam allowances onto your patterns. And I'm going to show you guys one more hoodie just so that you can see what this pattern looks on another hoodie. And yeah. So that's this one. Boom. So you can see the neck, it's quite wide. If I made that shorter but longer, it'd probably sit a little better on body. This isn't bad though. I like how the shoulder comes past my actual shoulder. So it's not right there. I like it more gangsta. Gangsta, gangsta, gangsta. We gangsta, 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 G, gangsta, 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 bro, gangsta, gangsta, gangsta. See that inside of that hood again, right side to right side, don't forget. All right, and your seam allowances. Peace, guys.